It's the 10:30. So call this meeting to order, 10:32. We're here to have a public hearing for planning and zoning to discuss and review, consider 3-lot minor subdivision. So I would entertain a motion to go into open a public hearing.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
so moved.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Cassidy,
Here.
Commissioner Doge,
Yes.
Commissioner Zimmerman.
Here.
All right, we are in a public hearing. Let me run through our county rules for public hearings. We have a signature sheet. If anybody wants to sign that, that wants to testify or speak before the hearing body at this meeting, they first have to fill in this information. Nobody can speak before the body until they've been recognized by the presiding officer. All public hearing procedures shall be recorded electronically, which we are recording with our new system here. Ask them to speak clearly and correctly so that it's part of the public record. Nobody should interrupt the speaker at the time. Any speaker who has evidence of any kind shall submit that evidence to the staff for the record, to be entered for the record with 4 copies. Each documentary or photographic item of evidence shall be provided. Everybody, let's see, needs to be respectful of the person speaking. And once we vote to close the public hearing, no further evidence or testimony will be presented or considered. Right. Those are the county's current public hearing rules. And the next item would be the staff report.
Thank you very much. Dan Martinson, Administrative Planner for the record. This is an application for a 3-lot minor subdivision by Reyes Ventures LLC. They are represented by Johnson Surveying Northwest LLC of Coeur d'Alene. And this is case number MS-157-23. What you have in front of you is a package of the file that particularly starts with the staff report, and it has the findings of fact, the applicable legal standards, the draft conclusions of law, the draft conditions of approval, and a recommended decision. We start in the staff report with a course of proceedings, and that is just basically the process of taking in an application and processing that application to the point of being able to move forward to a hearing. So we started that in March, went to agency review and completed that. Started the application for noticing, and we put out a 30-day comment, or I'm sorry, 30-day comment period that ended on May 15th, and scheduled this hearing for today. Site was posted and notices went out to the adjacent property owners as required. And we did receive one notice back, and we'll address that later in the report. So here we are, and the findings of fact are that the applicant here is Johnson Surveying Northwest LLC of Coeur d'Alene. The property owners are Reyes Ventures LLC of Coeur d'Alene. The proposal is requesting a minor subdivision to create 3 parcels. The parent partner that's located up at the end of the Reynolds Road, which is a spur road off of Bear Creek Road. And in the report here, it has the legal descriptions and the location. The zoning up in this area is natural resource zone, which is our open rural resource zone that of course allows for residential uses. All the surrounding areas, the same zone and similar surrounding uses. Very rural, large lot subdivisions. The lot size in this one, the parent parcel is roughly 20 acres, a little over 20 acres. And the proposed subdivision is 3 lots. Sorry, that reads a little wrong there. Comprised of 3 lots, 2 3-acre lots and 1 14 and some change acre lots. The minimum lot size in this area throughout our county is the small little city lot of 7,700 square feet. So this meets that requirement and certainly meets the 2-acre requirement for the minor subdivision process. There is a single-family residence and other outbuildings on the parent parcel. The 2 new 3-acre lots that are basically being proposed, there's no structures or improvements on those 2 lots. Topography and vegetation in this area is typical for that area. It's definitely timberland, typical grasses and bushes. The grades in the area, it does get steep on both sides at both extents. It's kind of a long linear property that runs across the valley of that area. It runs anywhere from 5 to 15% grades. There is a creek that runs through the one property, but there's no up there. There's not much of it, so there's no particular sensitive areas to be concerned about, and it's not mapped in the floodplain. Or I should verify that. Maybe it is. I don't think the mapping goes that far up. The comprehensive plan designates the area as the West Shoshone corridor, and certainly the comprehensive plan supports development of additional recreational and residential lots, particularly in that zone. Certainly be mindful of overcrowding, but it certainly allows it. There's no area of city impact in this area, so no cities were solicited for comment. Water supply and wastewater is the proposed lot is currently serviced by an individual well and a septic system. The two new proposed lots were designed to utilize individual wells. And the same thing, the individual septic service will be is what is designed and expected for the two new lots, and Panhandle Health has approved that. Access and transportation, it is off the end of toward the end of Reynolds Road, and then there's basically a private road that accesses through the neighboring lot through to this lot, and to each of these properties, and that road already exists. It's just going to spur off to the two new lots. If that's confusing, there's maps that demonstrate how those driveways. It's on the plat that shows how those new driveways will come off of that private road. We talked to Public Works about it. They didn't have any particular concerns for the two lots at the end of Reyes. The end of that road has a pretty good area for snowplow removal or snow removal and storage, and then they had no particular issues. But as of the writing of this report, they hadn't submitted anything in writing. So if needed, we can certainly get that, but typically if they don't respond, we can move on. The fire district, it's not located within the local fire district 2. Future construction will require access approval from the Shoshone County Ambulance Service District. And so that will go, which is through the fire district. So the fire districts will be addressing it at permit time. But there's no particular response to this application. This area is just outside of the institutional controls of the Bunker Hill Overlay District, so no particular requirements are in place for any development on that property. Of course, we always encourage smart construction. We do have site disturbance requirements and those things for future excavation and development. There's no proposed infrastructure, driveways or roads or anything being as part of this application, so there's no site disturbance or stormwater concerns at this time. They will be required as needed. This proposal meets the requirements for subdivision design standards. It has to do with lot size and how it's platted, and meets all those requirements. We've had that gets, so we didn't mention it on the last one, but that's part of what Rob Stratton reviews when he does the review on these, is he's reviewing that it meets not only our code, but Idaho code for platting purposes. And he's one of the signatures on the plats. So we did receive one public comment. It was opposed, received during this comment period. It was from a Mr. Fred Has at 634 Reynolds Road. That it's exhibit PC-1. It's in your packets. Mm-hmm. You have that letter to read. If you have any questions for me, unfortunately the applicant is not present, or the representative is not present. But if there's any particular concerns, I can relay those questions, or we can address that in however fashion you see fit. Moves on in staff report to list the applicable legal standards, and this is where it just lists the Idaho code for noticing the comprehensive plan, the subdivision, the zoning, and the floodplain over districts. Those are the codes that apply to these proposals. Then I put together a report or staff analysis, and then we basically summarizes that we've gone through the process, we've met all the requirements, and we're here to get a decision. I put an extra one in there. Proposal creates potential for residential lots on property previously underutilized. There is valid concern for incremental overdevelopment. Future development should be reviewed and be mindful of increased use of county access roads and impact services. As we discussed in other venues, when we do 2 and 3 lot subdivisions at a time, they're usually pretty low impact and they don't create, they seemingly don't create a lot of impact. But over 10 years, 15 years, you do a number of 3 lot subdivisions and now you've got 15 lots where you didn't, but if you came in with a 15 lot subdivision, that would really create some desire to address impacts. And so we try to do that on each one. And so try to address the impact that each one has. It does get difficult to, how do you put significant road improvements on small impacts? But you're right, it's over large impact. It would be something, but it's something to keep in mind as we move forward through additional subdivisions. And as we get into places where it's more and more difficult to build, the impacts are going to become greater. And then we do want to be mindful of that. So, as in previous several reports, we put in a list of the conditions of approval. There's no particular significant changes here. None of the agencies had any particular conditions or requirements. So the pretty standard fare conditions are that you'll continue to meet the current rules and regulations and future rules. Any new changes will come back before us. What is being approved is what's in this file and what is being proposed, not something different. And then we'll follow the final plat process for recording of the plat. And we'll meet the requirements of Panhandle Health District because they are the other signing agency on plats. And then I added in here the draft conclusions of law. And what we do with those is, out of all of these ordinances, there's conclusions of law we need to come to. And so we've written those up as a statement. And then the ideas that we find them in the affirmative. If for some reason they're not determined to be in the affirmative, that's a conclusion you as a board could come to. And then we need to understand the reason why if it does not. But the draft is that it does conform. So as part of your motion, I'll have you read through those and make those statements so that it's a decision that comes from you, the board, not just a recommendation from me. And then at the end, there's a recommended decision or motion, and just it's a pretty straightforward wording if you so choose to move that way. But one of the conditions, one of the options is to deny it or approve it with additional conditions if we saw fit to add conditions. And then if there was some need to continue the hearing, we could make that motion as well. So much like the previous one, that's about the end of the report. If there's any particular questions about the plat or this file or that process, I can answer that. If there's something I can try to answer on behalf of the applicant, I can try to do that. If I don't feel comfortable answering for them, then we may end up having to table it until we get an answer, but that depends on what you have for questions.
I just have one question here. So on these other lots, there's no fire protection. In order for them to build on them, they have to get that fire protection. Is that part of it?
Up in this area, there's ability to contract with the fire district.
Okay.
And then eventually as they annex out, then eventually they could become part of a fire district. I don't know how many properties out there contract with the fire district for services, but that is an option for people to, within a certain response area, the fire district has to make that decision on whether they'll contract with us. So up the North Fork, Fire District 2 does contract with some number of properties that they pay a certain fee a year, which would be similar to a property tax scenario.
Because I noticed I noticed the last one, they've already contacted the fire district and he okayed it.
Because they were within the fire district, and so that one, the previous one was within the fire district. The fire district responded and basically said yes, we would continue to provide service, and then he was okay with the driveway. And because it's in their district, they then have some additional authority to make sure they can get there. So the road has to meet their standards to get there. Out here, because it's outside of their district, they don't technically have much of authority to require anything as far as road and access. In this particular one, they would be able to access it. They can get there. It's not terribly steep or narrow or inaccessible, even in the winter. So in those areas, they don't have fire coverage, so it'd be on them to figure out their insurance.
the opposed party? Do we make any kind of response?
There's no particular response required. You're certainly capable, and if you want to, you can. Certainly you have every right to do that. The take I took on it was sort of what I mentioned, and part of why I added some discussion to it was that we do need to be mindful. His concern was, we live up in this rural area, and one, they moved up to a rural area to be away from people, but here we are, three more, or in this case, two more people are going to potentially be there. Up there, and that's how this, a long time ago, only a few people lived at Bear Creek, and now there's 43 different people who live up there, and so, 10 years from now, there might be 50 some odd people living up there, and so it does going to keep increasing, and the impact is going to keep getting more. But I did want to make that mention that we do need to be mindful from a planning standpoint and from a decision-making board is that, these incremental changes seem to be inconsequential, but they're not, because over time they can be. So, those are some of the things we'll keep pushing on our fire districts and our agencies to say, hey, this one might be a no-brainer, but we can encourage and teach the fire districts to require, proper turnouts and access. And same thing with Panhandle Health always looks at the surrounding area to determine, once we get a whole bunch of septics in an area, now we start really being concerned about, waste management of that sort. So there is already some concerns there, but that's why I addressed that. There's not a lot we can do about it in this case. It'd be pretty difficult to come up with a denial reason because it meets all the other requirements. It's large lots. I suppose if it was a whole bunch of little small lots, you'd be able to, or if it was a 15, 20 lot, or a large number, that would definitely create an impact. Largely, we'd go back to, well, what would be the impact, and that would be to traffic. Traffic would be, okay, what road improvements would need to be made to Reynolds Road to accommodate that? And then Public Works would chime in with, well, we need a widening, we need a turnaround, we need a better scenario, and then we can place those as conditions. But the agencies didn't see it as a large impact, but it was good, well noted, though. I'm glad you.
Under 5.07, applicants shall meet requirements as specified Panhandle Health District. If conditions are satisfied, PhD will lift sanitary restrictions. What sanitary restrictions?
So every new property automatically has a sanitary restriction from the state of Idaho. And and that's why Panhandle Health is a key signature on a plat, because they're not only approving the plat, but they're lifting the sanitary restriction. They don't have to lift it at platting time. The act of getting a septic permit also lifts the sanitary restriction. So the restriction holds until you get a permit.
What is the restriction, though?
That you have to meet their requirements for disposal of your waste.
Gotcha. That's what I
You can't just go do your own thing.
Gotcha.
And so that there's they will sign the plat, but they don't necessarily have to sign the sanitary restriction at platting time. If they've done the review and done the analysis, they can, and that's typically been the case. We have numerous properties that maybe not ever going to get it, not these in particular, but riverfront properties and properties that are inundated with floodplain and stuff like that that are pretty unlikely. And we don't ever restrict or prohibit, but that's why they sometimes don't sign the sanitary restriction. So you put that in there that they'll sign the plat, but
We know it's done properly.
yeah. And then on the plat, it'll show signed, but the restriction won't be lifted. But when these people go to develop a home, that's covered in the building permit process.
Okay. Well, we're going to run out of time here before our next meeting. Do we have any further questions regarding the staff report?
No.
All right. And we have no applicant here today and no public agencies here today and no other written testimony other than what was included in our packet.
Right.
All right. So at this point, do you see any reason we couldn't close the public hearing?
I do not.
Okay. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
I'll second it.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we are through hearing new evidence. We now just need to have commission deliberation. Do we have any thoughts or concerns that either of you or I want to express?
Nope. This time.
I too am concerned about how we will determine when this road has finally hit its maximum. I'm a little concerned about that gray area that Mr. has brought up, but it looks like in every way they have met the requirements of the law. All right. At this point, then, if we don't have any further discussion, I would entertain a motion that based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law set forth in these documents, Board of Commissioners order this application to be approved with the proposed conditions of the proposal does conform with the goals and objectives contained in the comprehensive plan. The proposal does conform to the standards contained in Title 10 subdivision regulations. The proposal is consistent with the purpose and intent of the existing zoning. The proposal use is compatible with the existing uses in the area, and the proposal use is not detrimental to public health, safety, or well-being. I would entertain that motion to approve with those conditions.
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion, final discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. It is approved with the proposed conditions. And with that, we will adjourn.